Hello Naked Turners, and welcome to episode 3 of The Spinning Top. So at the end of episode 2 I had taken and made the spindle as well as the T-handle ripcord for the piece. I've now put a string onto that ripcord, and now what I'm going to do is make the handle or the yoke that will fit down over this spindle to create a handhold so that you can use this ripcord to pull it. Thank you for watching episode 1 and episode 2, and if you haven't watched episode 1 and episode 2, by all means take the time to go ahead and watch those. It will show how I made the flywheel as well as the spindle and the T-pull handle. So let's get started on episode 3, where I'll be making this yoke or handle for this 5-minute spinning top. The other thing I'm looking at is I'm still a little bit thick here on this flywheel, so luckily I put a mortise on both sides of this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to rechuck this up and probably turn away a lot of this top surface so that I can get a lower center of gravity as well as reduce the weight on this flywheel in hopes of getting a 5-minute plus spin time. For the flywheel body, I used a piece of 1.5" by 6 1/4 or 6 5/16 square. So I cut myself a square out of this at 6 5/16, and then put it on my bandsaw, as you saw in episode 1, and roughed it into a circle. Some 5/8 inch by 5/8 inch white oak. This is just a small offcut from that, but I used the 5/8 inch by 5/8 inch by 7 inch long piece of white oak to make my spindle, which I then trimmed down to about 6 inches by the time I had parted it off of the lathe. The T-handle is also made out of a piece of 5/8 by 5/8, which I turned down to 1/2 inch, and that piece is about 4 1/4 inches long. You can make adjustments to whatever size feels good for your hand. Anyway, let's get going. I'm going to grab another piece of maple to make the handle with. Alright, I happen to be lucky enough that a friend of mine gave me some of this flooring stock from the San Francisco Ballet, and this stock is about 1 3/4 inches, and it has some relief on the back side for moisture movement underneath the floor, and it is tongue and groove, 1 3/4 inches thick, and the surface of this is 3 1/8. Now I'm going to be cutting off the groove as well as the tongue, so what I'll end up with is a piece that is approximately 2 5/8 wide by 1 3/4 thick, and then I'll be cutting it down a little bit, maybe closer to 1.5 inches or so. 2 5/8 by about 1.5 inches when I'm done milling this down. Then we'll put it on the lathe and turn it into the handle. Turning on the saw.
Okay, I'm just cutting away the tongue and the groove, and now I'm cutting away the profiles on the back or bottom of this board, creating my chunk of wood for turning.
I'm positioning this, showing me where my hole is here, and what I want to do is take and make 2 equal marks. And it looks to me like if I take a piece of this right about here, get it lined up to my edge, draw a line there, and then draw a line over here. Let's see how that works. Okay, my hole is below that line, so that's good. Now what I want to do is create the end or curved end of that. Because I'm going to have this between centers, I want to leave myself maybe about that much to part off of the end of this. So really my two legs of this yoke would be a little shorter, because I'll get rid of that end. Alright, now I want to create a curve down here in the bottom of that. Alright, so I have a drill bit set up in here which corresponds closely to the curve in the bottom of this yoke. Now what I'm doing, I'm taking and double sticking. I've got a little piece of double stick tape right here, double sticking this to my quill, and then using that as a backer block here, like so. And then what I'll do is I'll come in here, and first thing I got to do is make a center line mark here, and then I will make a little steb point there, or a little detent there that I can fit the head of this Forstner bit into. And then I will use my tailstock quill to act as a drill press to drill through this, keeping it nice and flat and straight. Okay, so I have this in here. Block is double stuck to my quill. Now I have the lathe turned down to right around 400 RPM. And now I'm just going to bring in my tailstock. Now stop the lathe, back off my tailstock, and you'll see I've got a nice hole centered and drilled nice and square through this. Now I'm not going to bandsaw this piece out yet, because I'm going to use this held here on my lathe. I'll turn down the handle, and then at the very end when I go to part this off, I'll take it back over to the bandsaw and cut this middle section out. Okay, so I've marked here center points on both ends, and now what I'm going to be doing is mounting this between centers. So I'm going to leave the yoke end down there. I'm going to center on my steb center. So let's take and check the measurement on this piece here again. So what I ended up with was a 2 5/8, like I said. Total length is 11 1/4, and total thickness is 1 9/16. So now what I've done is I've roughed out kind of the shape that I want to create. So with that shape roughed, what I'm going to do is make a couple marks. Okay, so I've got this nicely sharpened up, and I'm ready to start roughing this piece in. Let's start roughing this in. You can get some really nice cuts with your roughing gouge by using it more like a skew.
I'm using my roughing gouge to take down the handle and create the shape that I'm trying to get to, removing material rapidly with a sharp tool. Now I'm switching over to my detail spindle gouge in order to put a small detail bead down the pommel. A little bit of scraper, and then coming back to my roughing gouge. But I'm using my roughing gouge again here as more of a detail tool. Back to my spindle tool, creating some more detail. And now I'm going to switch back, and I'm using my roughing gouge and a little bit of spindle, and back to roughing gouge to do some finish work, and finishing everything up with the roughing gouge.
One of my subscribers had asked me to not wear my wedding ring, or mainly not to catch my wedding ring up in here. So I'm taking my wedding ring off and putting it in my pocket for right now. Alright, this is looking real nice. Now I want to define a couple little spots to make some burn grooves in.
Alright, I'm burning some wire burns in and sanding that down.
So now I'll just be rounding off these edges here using my, once again, using my roughing gouge safety. That is going to be in order to allow my spindle to travel through here. So where I want that hole to be is centered here, right about like that, and then probably right about in that zone right there. Okay, so first thing I'll do is drill I'm going to drill a hole right into that point using a 1/2 inch Forstner bit. Okay, so I'm set up now. I've got my 1/2 inch drill bit in here. Bandsaw. Well, first I'll finish it, take it into the bandsaw and cut those middles out. I just ran out of battery, but anyway, I drilled the hole, and now I'm just going to sand this until I'm happy with it. I'll put some finish on it, and then I'll take it into the bandsaw and cut out this middle section and cut off a little bit of the end of this here, and part this end off of the lathe. Not necessarily in that order.
Okay, I'm just sanding it down and putting some finish on, and then using my extremely narrow parting tool to come in here at the pommel and get it down to a real small piece and then hand saw it off.
So I've got a couple lines here. Now it's just a matter of following those lines. Putting on my bandsaw. Ready to rock and roll. Now I'll just make these holes slightly larger, ream those out a little bit, ream these holes out just a tiny bit, and it'll be ready to give a try. Okay, so now I'm just taking and reaming this hole out just a little bit, both sides. Again. Oh yeah, there we go. Now I've got a nice loose fit. I'll just do a little bit of sanding around these holes now with some 320 or maybe some 400 grit, and this will be ready to give a try.
Tune in for the follow-up and episode 4 of the high-speed spinning top, where I make some modifications and see if I can get this thing to spin for over 5 minutes.